This is why you never take your luggage from a plane crash. Passengers and crew scrambled to escape, some jumping from the plane and others using the emergency slides. The fire quickly spread, engulfing the entire plane in flames. Firefighters arrived on the scene and began to douse the flames, but it was too late for many of the passengers. On May 5, 2019, Aeroflot Flight 1492 was scheduled to fly from Sheremetyevo Airport, Moscow to Murmansk Airport in Russia with 73 passengers and 5 crew on board. The pilots completed their pre-flight checks and lined up on the runway at 18:03. It was a little bumpy, but 5 minutes later, a deafening sound rocked the entire plane. All of a sudden, the plane jolted. The primary radio went off, and the autopilot became inoperative. The pilots knew this was a minor electrical failure, nothing major. What they didn't know though was that in less than 30 minutes the life of every passenger on board would be on the line. Not just because of what the pilots were about to do, but because of the lethal decisions the passenger made themselves. That fateful day, as they were lining up on the runway, Flight 1492 had found themselves facing towering thunderstorm clouds. While passenger planes are designed to handle stormy conditions, pilots can request storm avoidance clearance. But Flight 1492 didn't request this, and instead it took off with the intention to turn away from the storm once they were in the air. As they climbed to 8,900 feet, lightning struck the plane, the right-hand angle of attack sensor, the right-hand ice detector, temperature probe and upper sections of the fuselage were all damaged. The radio and autopilot also cut out entirely. The crack of the lightning rocked the plane and had passengers clinging to their seats. Without a moment to lose, the captain activated their secondary radio, restored communications with the air traffic controllers and began flying manually. It overshot its initial approach, so it had to turn around in a circle to begin its approach again as it descended to runway 24. It was looking good, but suddenly as they hit 1,000 feet, an alarm began blaring to go around wind shear ahead. Wind shear is a sudden change in the approaching wind's velocity or direction, making airplane landings difficult or even impossible. The alarm went off 5 times, but for reasons unknown, and the crew never acknowledged it and continued their descent. When the plane hit 180 feet, another alarm sounded: glide slope. This alarm meant that the nose of the plane was angled too far down to land even in strong crosswind conditions like this. The captain tried to raise the nose up by increasing the plane's airspeed to 170 knots, 15 knots above the recommended threshold. But the nose wouldn't pitch up in time. At 18:30, the plane landed heavily on all 3 of its landing gears 3,000 feet beyond the runway threshold at a speed of 158 knots, about 181 miles per hour. The aircraft bounced to a height of 6 feet, and then 2 seconds later, when an attempt to engage the reverse thrusters failed, the aircraft touched down again and bounced to a height of 18 feet. Passengers still had their seat belts on, but they were being thrown round like rag dolls. The captain hit the thrusters attempting to take off to salvage the situation, but it was too late. The aircraft hit the runway for a third and final time at 140 knots, roughly 161 miles per hour. It was this huge final bump that collapsed the plane's landing gear, rupturing the wing and the fuel tanks within them. The leaking fuel quickly set fire to the back half of the plane, with a thick plume of smoke and fire trailing behind it. Thick black smoke was filling the cabin at an alarming rate, and the cabin crew initiated evacuation as soon as they could. One crew member kicked open the forward right exit door and triggered the inflatable escape slide just 8 seconds after the aircraft came to a halt. A steady stream of passengers evacuated the burning craft, with the first officer clambering out of the cockpit window via a rope. To avoid the smoke from the back end of the plane, Trying desperately to save themselves, some passengers had found the time to block the aisles and get their belongings from the overhead compartment before exiting the flaming craft. It undoubtedly cost those passengers and crew further back the precious seconds they needed to escape, which made it all the more terrible. It was revealed that only 37 passengers made it out. Experts claimed that passengers and crew in the rear of the plane stood a very limited chance of survival, once the fire had taken hold. Yet that chance might have increased had these passengers thought about anything other than their possessions.